Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, a regulatory landscape, and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me on the desk at the Nasdaq market site is Jamie Hopkins, president of FinServ Foundation and CEO of Bryn Capital Management, Dr. David Rhoiney, venture scout at O'Shaughnessy Ventures, Dr. Preston Cherry, founder and president of Concurrent Financial Planning, and Kate Healy, CEO and founder of AdvoKate IQ. We're here to discuss addressing the development gap with the next generation of financial advisors. It's great to have everyone with us. Of course, many of you back with us. Preston, let's kick it off. That's not our first rodeo. Talking about the traditional way of engaging the next gen of advisors. It's not, a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah, I think when you talk about financial education, it starts at the wrong place. It starts at the decision and the behavior mechanisms. And we need to rewind a little bit and get to know where people are. So learn about who they are as identity, their relationships with money, their cultures, their values. And if we start there, then you open up the heart, you open up the mind, release education, and then hopefully impact decisions.
Right. And David, you think about it in this way where there is a financial education elephant in the room.
Yeah, it's a giant financial education elephant in the room. We keep talking about financial literacy over and over and over again. It's been a theme since COVID, yet we haven't actually made a concerted effort to change how financial literacy is done in this country. Now, there are states that are trying to build in a financial literacy curriculum to their high school, but if you ask even us at the table, what's the definition of financial literacy? There's no concerted effort to say, hey, this is the definitive, concrete answer of what financial literacy is, and that has to change.
Yeah, it certainly does, Kate, and you and I have discussed this before. To what we were talking about with Preston, it isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. Everyone has different backgrounds, different needs, different goals.
Yeah, and I think some of it is just the awareness piece of it too, right? People don't even know what they don't know, and then they get to college and they're faced with all these decisions that can trip them up. We have to really get a better job at starting to create awareness around this in the middle school, elementary school, because that not only is that going to make them smarter consumers, it's also going to make them aware of this as a profession.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the path forward here, Jamie. Tell us about the FinServ Foundation.
Yeah, so FinServ Foundation, which everybody at this table's been part of, came out in 2019 to kind of address this problem in a little bit different way than we have in the past. We really looked at it as empowering young professionals through college to be able to come into financial services so that a more diverse group of the population saw themselves in future leaders. We have a challenge of retaining and developing talent in this business, so we really built this 2-year program to kind of a gap or a bridge program to go through college and then into the workforce to keep people engaged. And so far it's been really great. We've worked with over 500 students and over 38 colleges and universities.
Yeah, and so let's go around and learn how you're all working with the FinServ Foundation. So Davis, give us an overview.
So first, Jamie's one of my best friends. So he said, hey, I'm doing this thing in financial literacy. You're such a big advocate on it based upon the things that have happened in my life. I need you to help me with it. And so I said, okay, cool, I'll help you out. And we sort of just took off from there. The reality is FinServ Foundation, I think, can serve as the model to switch over to other industries, whether it's medicine, engineering, law, whatever you have. We all have the same problems. There's not enough education that is spread amongst all of us, and these industries do not represent what the rest of the country looks like. And I really wanted to see this successful because, quite frankly, I think it can grow and be a giant sort of helping hand for those who actually need it.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting because, there's such a push to have STEM classes, and certainly there is a need there. But if you can't even balance a checkbook or understand what a debit and a credit is to get through everyday life, engineering and mathematics and so forth is all important as we think about the path forward for, global innovation and so forth. But it's almost like you went to run a marathon, but you didn't learn how to crawl.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you said balance a checkbook. I remember a check register.
Now I said antiquated. Yeah.
But balancing a checkbook, balancing your finances is somewhat new to some folks. I'm in the university field, and I get to 18, 19, 20-year-olds, like we didn't talk about money, in our household. And so some of these concepts about just personal finance, the fundamental elements of what you're going to need the rest of your life, sometimes it's just simply not talked about in the home.
Yeah, well, okay, it's interesting too, because I know certainly with my kids, you need something on Amazon, order it. You want DoorDash, just get it done. So you point in your click in this concept of, when I was younger, babysitting, stacking up cash in my dresser drawer to afford a pair of sneakers. It's almost a foreign concept because everything is so automated and point and click.
It is. They don't see money. They don't
Right.
see that. My sister teaches preschool. She uses my old hotel key cards as debit cards for the kids. And she teaches them financial concepts through, this one's a credit card, this one's a debit card, because they don't see that exchange of cash. We would make those buckets of money. And so we have to get better at making it more real. What's happening when you do this, when you just click on Amazon? Where does that money come from? Where's that?
And that's a perfect segue because it does take more than just educators. It's the community and people within the industry that need to help bridge these gaps.
Absolutely. We all have to do this. I preach all the time about awareness. You know, I've been talking to you for 15 years about this. Just creating awareness that this profession exists, because it's just a fantastic place to work, but also think of what it's doing for your community as you raise the education level of everyone. The benefits to the community are endless.
Now that's actually been shown in literature to actually improve poverty rates, right? By if you can socially, economically change the way they think about money. There's been experiments in Africa on how to do these things, but we as a group, money's still a taboo subject. No one likes to discuss what salary they're making, right? We go to actually get hired for a job and you actually don't know what you're gonna make right off the bat because everyone's scared to talk about it. We have to be leaders and actually say, hey, you know what, we're gonna talk about money because money's not a scary subject. And until that actually happens, nothing's gonna change.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully there's a generational change that's associated with this. I mean, especially for, let's call it Gen Z and millennials and so forth, they've kind of grown up as digital natives with apps and so forth, and it's almost a cool thing to be empowered, whether you're on TikTok, Facebook, X, whatever, right? It's a cool thing to feel empowered.
Yeah, it's cool. The interesting part is that wealth building is very cool right now. So that is in. But what's interesting about that dynamic is that while wealth building is cool, the kind of details about actually how to do that, so like the financial planning side is not really that cool. So it's kind of interesting that you have the stuff you have to do to be able to build wealth there's not a big light on that. But then you go on TikTok or wherever you want to go, there's a lot about wealth building. So setting up LLCs and you just look at it, and I know this table laughs because it's a lot of bad advice out there because it jumps to the end part, not how to get there.
But if it's a catalyst to at least get people interested, because I do agree with you, finfluencers, there are some gray areas there. However, and David, you point this out, you want to challenge the financial guy stereotype.
Yeah, I can't stand it, right? I mean, if you go talk in medicine, if I talk to my colleagues, you're like, oh yeah, I got a financial guy. Well, guess what? I know a lot of
Well, it's two girls at the table here.
Yeah, I mean, Kate's at the table. I mean, there's a lot of financial women, right? Finance is more than what people have allowed the perception to be. If we talk about TV shows, right? And you go on, one of my favorite shows to watch is Billions, filmed here, I think, in New York, right?
I think they did an episode here.
How many times did they actually look at the women in the show and feature them actually running money? Right? So we're influenced by the things that we see, but guess what? We've only been showcasing white males being in finance. I know a lot of people who aren't white males in finance, and they're very good. One sitting here at the table.
No, we have a very diverse set. This is what financial planning looks like, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. The next gen advisor, and perhaps bringing in, having it become a little bit more digitized, the industry as well, and giving them the tools that they need to be successful. Because you address this here as well. You want to be careful about tackling burnout as well.
Yes, I mean, first of all, when we're talking about finfluencers, I just want to go back to that just for a second, is that I'm trying to be a finfluencer.
Right.
I mean, because we want good information. We want finfluence to win and thrive, not necessarily to hustle and all that. So the hustle culture and all that. So I'll just leave that there. Also to awareness. I think when young people tie into their stories and making it cool, right, and that's what the digitizing is, then they're like, I felt this way when I looked at my money. I want others to feel this way about their money. And then that's where the career introduction comes into play.
Yeah, it certainly does. Do you think the industry, Kate, is getting better at attracting new talent and fostering the next gen advisor?
Not enough. Not enough. But while I'll beat ourselves up for it, we're not doing enough. We're also only 50 years old. So we also have to remember the reason that there are so many white guys in it, because they started it 50 years ago and we haven't caught up yet to all of the other professions. We have a ton to do, but we are getting better at things like FinServ Foundation, where we're introducing it to people younger, but we're also giving them the tools to help get through it, because it's a hard industry to enter. So that barrier to entry is really tough.
Especially when you think about the wealth transfer as well, right? There's a couple of generational things that are happening with the wealth transfer within families, as well as with, transitioning books from retiring advisors to the next. So Jamie, what type of attributes do you look for when you think about the next gen advisor?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is something that the industry hasn't gone through yet, so there's not like a perfect playbook for how to transition. But one of the questions that I always have younger, professionals coming in is like, do you want to take over a book or did you want to build something yourself? Because sometimes when you take over a book or work with somebody else's clients, you end up representing people that aren't yours, that's not your culture, that you didn't want to work with. And it actually can be limiting, and I see more burnout in that world because they don't get to build what they wanted to build. So you do want to be very careful about that. Like, is that what you want to do? And dive into your why, understand their relationship. Are they a builder of things? And if they're a builder of things, they probably want to take a slightly different path in their profession. And there's not been a great kind of showcase of all the different paths in our profession. So one thing that we try to do with FinServ a lot is demonstrate up front to these college students, there's 1,000 different ways you can take this career and 1,000 ways you can impact the world, and which one's right for you. But there's not a perfect area for that, but we need a more representative group of advisors to deal with this transition, because it's first going to transition to women, right? And we still don't have enough women advisors out there in this profession to really service equally the amount of people that want that advice.
Right.
And we always talk about, we always talk about women advisors, and it's a small number. It's 23% by CFP board, 16% for Cerulli. The reality is 46% of the independent industry are women, but they're in roles that aren't always client-facing. So they're doing the marketing, they're doing the client service, they're doing the trading. They're CEOs of the firm, but we don't count them because they're not a financial advisor. I think we do a disservice by always talking about that and not talking about the full plethora of jobs that are in this whole ecosystem. You don't always have to just be the front-facing financial advisor.
Which is so interesting, because we get student groups that come through the Nasdaq market site here, and their first thing is, oh, I want to be on a trading desk or within a trading capacity. Meanwhile, all the business functions, whether it's accounting, compliance, legal, marketing, comms, every single company, if you think about Fortune 500, has these different verticals. So being, in legal at JP Morgan is being in legal at GE, right, to a certain extent. So David, I want to talk about mentorship for a moment here, because you want to be able to develop your own style, your own book, but you're also looking for advice and that mentorship to help guide you.
You are what you see, right? If I don't see it, I can't be anything of it. So when we talk about the plethora of jobs out there, how many times are they actually featured, right? How many times do you bring someone from marketing up? They're always behind the camera. They're behind sort of everything that's going on. How many times have you shown that the general counsel or whoever's working in the back office actually come up? Those things are not as sexy, so they don't get a lot of face time. Everyone thinks that trading is the right thing, but there's so many things that actually go into trading and risk management. Those things are more stable. I mean, understanding who the people are, and part of mentoring and part of coaching, what we do at FinServ Foundation, is actually exposing them and telling them it's okay not to be these things.
Yeah.
You don't have to be Hollywood. You can just get the job done and be a star in your role.
See, Preston, this makes me so happy to hear that, because sometimes you think of revenue centers, cost centers. Well, guess what? Without compliance, without marketing, without your risk managers, there is no revenue stream, because that's what keeps us in business, especially in financial services.
Right. I mean, they're called team members.
Right.
And this is why building a company culture is very much affects the bottom line. People want to feel connected to where they are. You have the pushback right now. People are like, okay, well, if I don't want to be somewhere and I'm not valued, I'm not heard, then I simply don't want to work. So this is why if you create a company culture, value everyone, whoever's bringing it to the table, highlight them and saying, listen, you're part of the team, then it does open up that bracket of different opportunities as far as career is concerned.
Yeah, and that's like, where I work at Bryn Trust and WISFIS, it's 90% of the people are not on the front lines, right? And it's the second line and third line and risk and trading and marketing and all those things that really make companies great. Because without them, right, you don't have anything. I mean, that is the core of really your offering in finance. And those teams, whether you're a custodian or anybody, they're so important. And I think that gets lost to the point of when you look at this profession, you don't always realize how important and impactful those roles are.
Yeah.
I think that's why mentors are very important. And FinServ does so well is that with the partnership of mentors, how do you guide folks through that 0 to 3 after they're navigating college and then they're trying to get into the profession? We have different types of professionals in FinServ. It's like, you can do this, you can do that, you can do that, whatever it may be. And it's like, okay, I can do that too, because there's somebody that's already done it inside the FinServ.
0 to 3, explain that concept.
0 to 3 is with your first 3 years of your career. And we were talking about burnout. And if folks are not finding a good culture, if they're not finding a good mentor, if they're not finding a good pathway, then they wash out and they never return. And when I say they, it's particularly young folks.
Yeah. Kate, share a success story with us.
So yeah, so just yesterday, I had one of my mentees text me that she just passed the SIE exam, which was huge, right? And she's one of those who's probably not going to be forward facing.
And that is?
It's the Securities Industry Exam.
Yeah.
So it's a step up to the Series 7, but it's allowing for a lot more access. It used to have to be affiliated with a broker-dealer in order to get into this business at all. So this is allowing people to actually have access into the industry before that. So that was a great. And then just today, talked to one of my mentees is starting her internship today. So she's on day 3, and she texted me to tell me how the day was going and all of those kinds of things, and just move our Zoom schedule because she's in the office all the time. So we're going to talk at night. But it's having those relationships, and to your point, the 0 to 3, right? 40% of employees who don't have a mentor leave their firm. So as a firm, you don't want to have to replace that because that's 2x their salary. That's so expensive, and all of that. So creating that culture where you're humanizing the role and you're setting people up with mentors, and that's what FinServ Foundation is doing. So we're doing such a service to the firms. We have many small firms in our industry who maybe not have these programs. The FinServ Foundation is providing that support.
So Jamie, we're on our last minute here. I'm going to give you the last word. How does one get involved with the FinServ Foundation? Yeah, so we've got great partners with FinServ. We've got over 150 industry mentors, so we're always looking for more mentors. So you can go to the website, finservfoundation.org. And then the other thing is we're a nonprofit. Everybody here is a volunteer. And to work with all these students and universities, we always need donations from our great corporate partners. And that's really how we fund this. So the BlackRocks, the WISPISes of the world, they really donate money. And so we can go out and mentor, coach, and give access to all these great students out there that are going to lead this profession. Amazing. And exposure via Nasdaq. Thank you so much for joining us at MarketSite. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.